Donald, we're 2 days away from Halloween. Did you know that 3 days after Franz Joseph Haydn was buried, they stole his skull?
That's interesting, Paul. I wonder where he's hiding now.
Oh. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the CMI Composers Cup, Forbidden and Forgotten. And we are finally to the Symphony 16. I have Paul Montalvo, Dr. Eric Schneeman, and welcome again. My name is Donald Mason, and let's have a happy Halloween. So looking at this first matchup between Zelensky and Utspolskaya. Zelensky, overall number 1 seed, handles business 9-4 versus Utspolskaya. Pretty simple matchup there.
Yeah, I mean, Zemlinsky still steeped in that late romantic tradition, but of course enough progressive elements in its harmonic language, right. Very lush lyrical orchestral writing. So I think that's what ultimately came to the fore in this competition. Absolutely. Right here.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I did a lot of listening this past week, especially her sonatas, and her nickname was the Lady with the Hammer.
Right,
and you can really hear that, you know, when you hear certain sections of her work. She just really had a unique sound, but I think against someone like Zemlinsky, it was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Zemlinsky is still holding on to the number 1 seed, and it will face the winner of Olivier Messiaen versus Sofia Gubodolina. And in this matchup, Messiaen was just too much for Gubodolina. Took this one 8-3. What do you think about that one, Paul?
Well, you know me, I you know. It's probably the right result. I still think Gubodolina is much more interesting as a composer, just for my taste. But you know, Messiaen is brilliant, and I could see how that happened.
Yeah.
So we have Zemlinsky versus Messiaen going on to the Encore 8, and that again should be just a fantastic matchup. Really kind of sad to see Sofia fall to Messiaen, but again, all of these composers will have another chance to get some redemption on future composer cups.
Just a quick note, 2 of those, you know, the torchbearers for Shostakovich are now.
Yeah, so I guess Shostakovich Revenge only went so far.
Yeah, so Shostakovich will have to get some new works in for the future seasons.
Yes.
All right, so that wraps up the natural bracket for today. Going on to the waltz bracket, which features the other number 1 seed, Mendelsohn versus Faronk. And Mendelsohn is just on a complete tear in this tournament, winning 12-0. Honestly, like, did Faronk even show up?
Look, I mean, Faronk showed up. She tried. You gotta love her, but Mendelsohn here, I seriously was questioning, did he, you know, he didn't even have to play, really. I mean, he got a rest, almost. You know, he got a relaxing game out of here. Again, you take a look at something like his Midsummer Night's Dream music, right? You take a look at the intermezzos where you have this almost choral hymn at the beginning, but all he uses is bassoon mixed with horn, a little bit of bass in there, right? I mean, maybe just a little smattering of clarinet to add some color, but he understands. I don't have to have a full brass choir to make a wonderful, rich harmonic sound. I can just use bassoon and horn, and I'm good to go. And that's all he had to put out there, and that's all he did in this match. And he sweeps it, right? No questions asked. I think Mendelsohn, once again, shows it doesn't take much to be a wonderful composer. Faronk, I will give her unbelievable credit. Again, she has really made it back into the concert hall, but I think we're just going to need to program her music more often, so that way we really keep her in people's ears.
Well, so Mendelsohn at this point has not even dropped a game. We will see if that continues, because on the other side of the waltz bracket, we have one of the tightest matches in this whole bracket so far. We have Malot going versus Coleridge-Taylor. Somehow, Coleridge-Taylor on a buzzer beater came through 5-4. I would say this one is a minor upset.
Right. So let's break this down here a little bit, okay? So both composers, so Coleridge-Taylor, a black British composer who actually comes to the United States, is very much and fascinated with American music. But at the time when he's composing, it's really the spiritual, the African-American spiritual that's taking over. Mayol, when he is going out into visiting American clubs in places like Harlem, he's experiencing jazz. So already right there, we were having a pretty hard matchup. For Mayo, he's adapting jazz into the classical idiom. Coleridge Taylor, he's adapting the spiritual, right? However, what happens though, and how is it that Coleridge Taylor wins this at the end? I think here we're going to have to blame it on Mayo, which is he takes the jazz idiom and he puts it in as a fugue, right? I think this is getting a little, it's getting a little too formulaic.
So remind us, what is a fugue?
Right, so a fugue is sort of the height of counterpoint, right? Where you have a composer will take a single melody and he will have voices imitating that melody while different voices are then performing in counterpoint, okay, right? In contrast to that melody. Right. And, you know, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, all the great composers, all composers know the fugue and love the fugue and use the fugue effectively. The question becomes, can you apply something like the fugue when you are trying to also learn and understand jazz, right? And I think that is where Mayo just lost it there at the very end. And again, Coleridge Taylor fighting to the bitter end, buzzer beater at the end. It was a good fight. It was a really good matchup. But in the end, Coleridge Taylor, I think, just shows a little bit more finesse to win it.
So there you have it. We have Mendelsohn having basically a bye match versus Coleridge Taylor moving on and expending a lot of energy. So we'll see if that's going to impact how they perform in the next round on the Encore 8. So moving into the ensemble bracket, again, at this point, we still have all of our number one seeds. And in this case, we have number one seed Schoenberg going against Price. And this is a tough one for me to announce, but Schoenberg does pull this one out 8-3. I was really hoping to see Florence make it a little bit farther, but just a really tough matchup to go against such a prolific composer against Schoenberg.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to remember we're really just getting to know her. Mm-hmm. You know, like I mentioned in the previous episode that Schirmer, the famous publishing house, just bought all of her works to be published in 2018. So that was only 3 years ago. Yep. There are quite a few orchestras that are doing her symphonies now, and so she's getting out there. But I think it's just going to take a little time for us to get acclimated, because she's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and I can't agree more. And it's just great to see, at least making it to the Symphony 16. And again, I think we'll hear more from Price. And in the other side of this bracket, we have Korngold, the number 2 seed, going against Clara Schumann. And this was another tough one. Korngold, I think, just pulling ahead in the mid stages of this matchup, 6-3 to take the victory here.
Yeah, I think here you're just looking at the fact that Korngold's violin concerto is getting popular again. Violinists love it. It's making its way into the concert hall. Of course, we have a lot of violin players with Classical Music Institute. So, of course, they're going to go with the violinist over the pianist. I mean, come on. You got to admit it, right?
Yeah, and, this is going to shape up to, I think, be one of the closer matchups in the Encore 8 when we have Schoenberg going against Korngold. Both of them, still prevailing pretty heavily and still have, I think, some things to prove in the final round of who's better between this matchup. Yeah,
and we should also point out here, I think it is somewhat sad, a little bittersweet that all the female composers have been eliminated by this point.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we'll see if I feel like there's going to be a breakthrough at some point in some of these composer cups that we will see one of these fallen women composers that have been doing fantastic. I think we will find a breakout soon in one of these composer cups as we continue this series.
Right.
And in the Region 4, our Serenade bracket, we have Meyerbeer versus Weil. And finally, we do have a number 1 seed that falls. Weil taking
God.
this one 6-4. Paul is pretty happy.
I'm very happy
to see this one fall. And it's a bittersweet for me because, of course, as you all have been following, I picked Meyerbeer to take it all. It's kind of my number 1 dark horse, but Weil is just too strong in this matchup.
Yeah. So let's break this down because this is the first time. Well, one of the first times we have really genre against genre, right? The two composers in the same genre, Weil opera, Meyerbeer opera. That is what they're most well known for. What happens here? Meyerbeer, you gotta love him. Such wonderful vocal technique, wonderful orchestrations. But in the end, it was the coloratura that killed him, right? It was all those embellishments. What was he trying to do? I mean, he's trying to kind of run all over the place, and he was not getting to the goal, right? It was sort of, when are we going to get to the goal? You have to drive to the goal. And that was what was driving me crazy watching this match, right? Weil picks jazz, uses jazz, infuses it with good old-fashioned 20th century harmonies, has this sort of Gebrauchsmusik, music for use, music for the people. It's appealing to people. It works for people. You don't have to be a vocal athlete, gymnast to really get it, okay? So what does he do? He takes that, he puts it in the goal where it's supposed to be, and just very satisfying performance overall coming out from Weil.
And I think just really quick notes is that, Meyerbeer operas were suppressed by the Nazi regime, and Weil had to emigrate to the United States, and he fled Germany in 1933, fled to the United States in 1935, and became a U.S. citizen in 1943. So these composers were definitely affected by what happened during that period of time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And again, we will see Weil moving on to face the winner of Martineau versus Bloch, the number 2 versus the number 6 seed. In this one, Martineau does have a tough matchup, but does prevail 7-5. This one I feel could have gone either way, but Martineau. Paul, why do you think Martineau pulled ahead in this one?
I think it's just, he's prolific. Bloch is a wonderful composer. But there's just something about the amount of output that Martineau, good output and great output that he put out there. And he was also blacklisted by the Nazis in 1939. He emigrated to the U.S. in 1941 and returned to Europe in 1953. So another one of those composers that period of time had a great effect on him and his music.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Eric, any thoughts on this one?
No, as Paul says, I mean, Martineau he's a consistent composer. He is a prolific composer. He, his rhythmic vitality. You just gotta love it. So yeah, I wasn't surprised here in the ultimate outcome of that match.
So on the Serenade bracket, going into the Encore 8, we have Weil versus Martineau. And just to recap, and then we'll get some quick predictions from Paul and Dr. Eric here. So Zemlinsky versus Messiaen moving on in the natural bracket. Mendelsohn takes on Coleridge-Taylor from the waltz bracket in the Encore 8. Schoenberg is going to take on Korngold for the third slot into our Forte 4, and Weil takes on Martineau to take that last spot there. So we have some fancy prediction crystal ball light here. And Eric, what do you see happening in the Encore 8?
All right, Zemlinsky's going to overtake Messiaen. Mendelsohn definitely just going to dominate Coleridge-Taylor. Schoenberg over Korngold. Weil over Martineau.
I have no prediction. I have no horses left in this race. So, I'm just going to sit back and just see what happens.
Well, your number 1 still in there?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, Zemlinsky is still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but I doubt he's not going to get that far.
All right, so
I have a feeling.
We've heard it from here.
Yeah.
Paul's losing faith in his horse. You can still feel the energy from Mendelsohn over from Dr. Eric. So tune in next week as we crack into the Encore 8. Paul Montalvo, Dr. Eric Schneeman, I'm Donald Mason. And until next time, have a spooky weekend, and we'll catch you in the Encore 8. Thanks, everybody.